Hi everybody, I'm Chef Susie with Escoffier Online, and for our webcast today I'm going to be doing the Pastry Cream assessment, which is a French custard. It's made on the stove with sugar, egg yolks, milk, and a little bit of flour for its thickening agent. And we're going to do the traditional recipe, which is the flour, and the modern recipe is with the cornstarch and the butter. So knowing that, let's get started. I have my sanitizing solution here from my good sanitation practices. I've cleaned my station ahead of time before I set up with my sanitizer, and when I break down tonight, I'm going to be cleaning it again. I have my spray bottle with my solution and my bucket with my container and my rag. So either one will work, whatever you like to use. When I clean up, I actually use both. If I have some stubborn things collecting, I'll use the bucket, and then for lighter things, I'll use my spray bottle. So I'm going to put this away, and then we're going to get started. So for the the pastry cream assessment, we just have a few ingredients, and we're going to start with our eggs. And we're only going to be using the egg yolk portion of the egg, and I'm going to separate these. And I'm going to be saving my egg whites because I like to eat egg white omelets, so the egg whites are nice for that. Or if you're going to be doing something in the future with a little bit of meringue, then you can save the egg whites for that too. Just wrap them up and put them in the refrigerator, and you can keep them in there for a few days. So I've got my 4 egg yolks. Wipe off my counter a little bit here, and I'm going to be adding my caster sugar, and I'm just going to whip this until they just become a little bit lighter and everything is incorporated. And then I'm going to add my all-purpose flour, which also is going to act as a thickening agent. And be sure that you sift this flour, and I'm just sifting it right into my bowl today. A lot of times I'll use my parchment, but it's a small amount and it's going into the bowl, so I'm just going to put it right in there. Make sure that you do the sugar and the egg yolk first, because it's going to make this flour mix in a lot easier. It's going to be a little bit harder to mix the flour with the yolks, and you may get some lumps. But when you already have the sugar in there, it seems to loosen things up a little bit. So now that everything is together, I'm going to go ahead and add my vanilla. And this is going to thicken our milk and form our pastry cream. Okay, we're going to set this aside, and I have my milk with my small pot. We're going to go and put this on the stove.
Got a question, Chef.
Okay, let's get this started on the stove. I'm going to use about a medium flame, nothing too high. You don't want to scorch this milk, and you don't want anything too low. So our milk, we're going to let it warm until it just starts to bubble a little bit, and then we're going to add it into our egg mixture, mix it, and then we're going to turn it back on the stove. And we have a question.
Can you use cornstarch?
The question is, can you use cornstarch? You can. This is a traditional recipe, and it calls for flour, but if you look in the recipe database and also in the video tutorial, it shows the use of cornstarch and butter, and that's what makes the traditional recipe different from the modern. Just think of it as the traditional, you're thickening it with the flour, and the modern, you're thickening it with some cornstarch and adding the butter at the end. And for your assessment, I recommend the traditional, but if you'd like to use the modern, that's fine too. So we're going to warm this milk up, and then we're going to add it to our egg mixture. And then we'll return it to the stove, and we're going to cook it until it kind of bubbles a little bit, maybe for about 3 minutes, because you want those egg yolks, which are the hazardous part of the egg, you want those to cook all the way and thoroughly. So no one's eating raw egg. So it's just going to take a couple minutes here. And then we will add the milk to our egg yolk mixture a little slow until it's all incorporated. And the reason that we're doing this tempering is we don't want to add this egg mixture directly to the milk on the stove, because it's going to start cooking right away and it's going to kind of curdle it. So it's important that you do this tempering process, and that's what we mean by pouring the milk into the egg mixture and then putting it back on the stove. Because if you're adding eggs directly to warm milk, it's just going to cook the egg and it'll be curdly and lumpy. But if you have any lumps, or if you happen to scorch the bottom, you can strain the mixture too if it's not looking too smooth. So this is getting nice and warm. I want it to get just a little bit warmer before I start putting it into my mixture, because you want it to be started and be very warm for when you turn it back to the stove, so it doesn't have to sit in the pot as long, because that could cause some scorching too. So this is getting nice and warm. And we're going to go and put this in our egg mixture. So we're just going to add it slowly. I'm just going to set it down so I can kind of keep up with this a little bit. This is a nice recipe. It's a small batch. It's great to learn with. And it's really good to learn this traditional method for your first time. So I'm just kind of adding my milk slowly, and I'm keeping up with it a little bit. And keep in mind, when you're doing this, you don't want to go anywhere when you're making your pastry cream. You've got your milk on the stove. It can easily boil over. Kind of stay around where you can keep an eye on it. And especially after you add this mixture and put it back on the stove, it's going to cook pretty fast. And like I said, you don't want to go anywhere. Stay there, keep an eye on it, be mindful of it. So we're going to put this back in the pot. And then we're going to go back to the stove. So I've got my burner on the medium heat. And I'm just going to keep a real close eye on this. And it seems like it takes a few minutes, but once it starts thickening, it goes kind of fast. So I've got just a little bit starting around the edges. And whisk all the way to the bottom of the pot so you can feel if there's anything going on in the bottom. If you've got any scorching, you want to be mindful of that. If you feel any scorching on the bottom, then maybe turn down your heat a little bit. It may just be going too fast on the outside. And I've got this cooking a little bit on the outside. And like I said, it goes kind of fast. It's already starting to get thick. And once it starts, it seems to go fast. So you don't want to go anywhere, that's for sure. Kind of scrape down your edges with your whisk. And this is going to get thick and it's going to bubble a little bit. You want to see a little bit of bubbling, and then you know that your egg yolks are cooked and your flour too. So you can see I've got a little bit of bubbling and it's turned nice and thick. And see how fast that happens? So don't walk away from this, because you could scorch it. And if you don't keep up on your mixing, you could get a lot of lumps too. So this is cooked perfectly. We're going to take it off the stove and turn it onto our pan. Kind of move some of our stuff out of the way. Okay, we have a question.
How high of a heat was it?
The question is about the heat. How high was the heat? It was about a medium flame. You don't want it too low because you want it to have some strength to cook the custard. not too high because it's going to scorch. So we're just going to take one of our cookie sheets and put a piece of plastic on it, and we're going to turn our custard onto the cookie sheet and then cover it, and it can cool easily in this thin layer. And we have another question.
What's the difference between traditional and modern pastry cream?
The question is, what's the difference between traditional and modern pastry cream? The traditional pastry cream is thickened with the flour, and the modern is thickened with the cornstarch, and butter is also added in the end. They're both good recipes. They're equally as good. I recommend both of them. But for your assessment, try the flour-based recipe, just so you can kind of have it under your belt and you've made it. And then you can kind of think of escoffier when you're doing the traditional method. It's something that he did traditionally. So we're just going to spread this thin on our pan. I'm just going to let it steam for a minute, and then I'm going to go ahead and cover it. I'm going to move some of these things off of our table. Okay, you want to put the plastic right on top of the custard or the pastry cream, and this way it's not going to form a skin at all. So you're kind of sealing it in there. And then in this thin layer too, it's going to go in the refrigerator and it's going to cool a lot faster for you. But don't be afraid to just place it on top and press it in, and then you won't get a skin. If you form a skin on this, when you go to use it, it's going to be lumpy. The skin will create lumps in your mix, so be mindful of that. So I made a little batch earlier, and it's nice and cool, and we have another question.
Can I use anything other than saran wrap?
The question is, can you use anything other than saran wrap? I recommend saran wrap for this. If you don't have any, you can go ahead and try to use some aluminum foil, but I wouldn't use your traditional wax paper because it could melt the waxiness off of it. But you could try the parchment paper. The problem with parchment paper is it may curl up on you when it gets warm and damp. It has a tendency to curl. So try to use a saran wrap or maybe a little parchment. If you don't have it, aluminum foil, but you could get a little bit of aluminum taste too. So maybe if you don't have any saran wrap in the house, maybe wait until you go to the store because it's kind of recommended for this. We have another question.
Is it like the cream that's inside of the donut?
Is this like the cream that's inside of the donuts? Yes, it is. Like the Bavarian cream inside the donuts. This is what this is. So I've got my batch that I made earlier. I'm just going to peel off the top. And as you can see, there's no skin on it. It's nice and smooth on top. It's exactly the way that we want it. And this is great filling for your eclairs, which you made your shells earlier. And you can just use it for so many things. You can fill cakes with this. You can fill your vol au vents that you made with your puff pastry dough. You can even fill your little cream puffs with this. This is excellent for fruit tarts also. You did your pâté sucré and your pâté foncé dough for your fruit tarts. So you could put a thin layer of this in the bottom, cover it with fruit, put a little apricot glaze, and you have your fresh fruit tart. There's so many uses. You can also make an English trifle with this. You can layer some cakes with some pastry cream and some fruits. And it's really good just on its own. And you can also use it for a custard pie filling too. And today I'm just going to put some in a glass with some fruit, and that's it, and it's a nice, easy dessert.
Another question.
And we have another question.
How long was the pastry cream in the refrigerator?
The question is, how long is your pastry cream good in the refrigerator? I usually keep mine in the refrigerator for about 3 or 4 days. You can go ahead and make it a day or two in advance, and you can even keep it for 3 or 4 days. You have fresh milk in here and eggs. Always be mindful when you're going to store something that you check the expiration dates on your product first to make sure it's going to last those few days in the refrigerator. So check those expiration dates and you'll be fine a few days in the refrigerator. Sometimes when you keep these in the refrigerator, a little bit of liquid may come out. Don't worry about that, just kind of discard it, and you can go ahead and use it for what you're doing. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my pastry cream and I'm going to put a nice scoop. This is an easy dessert. It kind of lets the flavor of the pastry cream be its own. And I'm just going to put some in the bottom of my glass. If you have a favorite sauce, you could put a little bit of that in there too. And I'm just going to cover it with some fruit. And this is just a nice, simple use of this pastry cream. It's just a classic element in the pastry kitchen. You can do so many things with it. So I'm just topping this with some simple berries. And I'm just going to finish it off with some whipped cream. I've just whipped my whipped cream on my mixer ahead of time with a little bit of sugar and vanilla. And I put it in my pastry bag that was in the toolkit. And a nice orange slice is nice on this too. Or any fruits that you like. I mean, pastry cream is universal. It's a mild vanilla flavor. It goes well with a lot of different fruits, pretty much anything. We'll put a little raspberry, and we just have a little simple parfait with just some fruits that I had in the refrigerator and my pastry cream assessment. So we're going to go ahead and talk about our cordials in tradition with our new tradition. So if you have any questions, make sure that you get them in at this time. We have another question.
How long does it have to cool in the refrigerator?
The question is, how long does the pastry cream cool in the refrigerator? I would say at least an hour. Feel it to make sure it's chilly, that it's not warm at all, especially if you're going to be using it with something like whipped cream, because it'll melt it. So an hour or two, and you can make it the day before too. It'll be fine in there overnight or even a few days ahead of time. It's a nice thing about pastry cream, it holds. If you're in a big commercial kitchen, you'll be making your pastry cream a little bit earlier in the week for your weekend desserts. So it would be part of your production, your pastry cream and your ganache, making those early in the week. So you have the bases for your cakes and pastries ready to go. And then when you make your eclair shells or your cream puff shells or your cakes, you have something on hand to fill them with. And that's kind of how the production schedule goes in a lot of pastry kitchens. And you can utilize that in your own home kitchen too. Kind of get your pastry cream ready the day before and maybe make your cake or your cream puffs and eclairs the next day. Pull it out, fill them, finish them, and they're ready to go. So knowing that, we're going to be talking about our two cordials today, our two liqueurs. And we have another Bailey's liqueur. This is a coffee liqueur. And keep in mind that Bailey's is a really young company, 1974. This was introduced. It's an Irish whiskey with cream, really nice combination, a little bit sweet. It's great just on its own, or even some people drink this on ice, and it's wonderful in desserts, and it would be a really nice complement with the pastry cream. You could make a nice coffee flavored pastry cream by putting a little bit of this in there. And this was named after the Bailey's Hotel in London. And we also have our limoncello, which is another Italian liqueur. And what's neat about the liqueurs that we've been talking about in the after dinner drinks, most of them have a European influence. I think a lot of them have been from France and Ireland and Italy, and it just shows the connection to Escoffier with his European influence, and then we have all these wonderful liqueurs with their European influence too. So the limoncello is from southern Italy. There's a small town that if you were driving along the coast, you would reach before you would take a ferry to the island of Capri. It's called Sorrento. It's on the mainland, and the town has a small lemon orchard right in town. And this is where this liqueur is made. It's a really fine lemon liqueur. It has a really distinct flavor, and it's only found in that part of the country. It's imported to other countries such as here, but it's found there, and you'll even meet people if you go there that have probably worked in a limoncello factory because it's popular, it's native of the area. So this is a really nice liqueur, comes in a nice frosted bottle, and this is nice that you can add it to some of your desserts, some of your creams. It'll give them a nice lemon flavor with a little bit of a hint of alcohol. And we have a question.
Which gives the better flavor, liqueur or extract?
The question is, which gives better flavor, liqueur or extracts? The extracts are more intense, and they're not going to give you any of that alcoholness or that alcohol flavor. It's really what you like and whatever you're doing. But keep in mind that some of these alcohols have very unique flavors to them that you can't find in extracts, like your orange and your anise and your lemon. You're going to get a little bit different flavor with these liqueurs, and then you'll get the alcoholness too. And just for example, the Baileys, there's not an extract for this. You have to use the alcohol. You're going to get that unique Irish whiskey and cream flavor, and this one is coffee flavored, and we've also talked about the mint flavor too. In the Frangelico, for example, the hazelnut, you won't get that distinct Frangelico flavor from extract. So it's really what flavor combinations that you're looking for and what you like, and that's part of you tasting your own food and coming up with your own style and what you like. And also the Grand Marnier is the orange liqueur, but it's a lot different from the orange extract. It has that very unique flavor to it. So in time, you'll be working with different products and you'll see what you like. And if it's something that you don't want to have any alcohol flavor in, you're going to use your extracts. If you want a little alcohol flavor, you're going to go ahead and use one of these liqueurs that we've been talking about. So if there aren't any more questions, we're going to say goodbye for tonight, and we'll see you next week. And thanks for joining us. Bye.